Okay, it took me a minute to figure out what I wanted to do, but I think what I want to do is I want to focus in on this. Pray big, dream big, follow your heart, and then take a moment in the middle, which is something that my husband and I teach the kids that we work with. It just means to take a moment, pay attention, look around. And that, for me, is super important because I don't always, and I want to make sure that I do. So what I'm going to do, you can cut these out one word at a time, or you can cut them out. Now it took me so long that my glue is like dry. So I'm going to put a little more glue on, or gel medium, I guess it's technically called. But yeah, you can cut these out one word at a time or one phrase at a time. It's completely up to you. You could do these really nice and all lined up. I like to kind of make them offset a little bit. I think it looks a little more interesting. And then just kind of build them on there. Put them the way you like them. So here again, just take your time, cut them out, follow your heart, be yourself. I'm going to keep. So this is just like good advice. It's the good advice flower. These are things that mean something to me, right? These are things that matter to me, and I want you guys to find words that matter to you. And the other thing is, you may not want any words on your I think it would look a little bare without words, but I love words. I'm a word nerd. So I would advise you to find some that you really love and go ahead and put those right in, even if it's just one or two words. The other thing you could do is if the words that you want, like maybe you love a specific quote or Bible verse or something that your mom always says to you or your dad always says to you or something that means something to you, you can just print these off of a computer and you can use them. Don't use them right away because you'll smear the ink, but you can use them so easily that way, which, you know, it's kind of easier that way, just to kind of, then you have really great versatility, which means you can just do whatever you want. It gives you like all this new possibility. Okay, so I'm looking for the word shine, which is right here. And I'm trying to be careful because any of these words could be used in another piece of art. So because I'm kind of stingy that way, I like to hold on to them. Okay. So then here, again, we're just doing anything you like, okay? Anything that matters to you. Maybe you love to sing and dance. Maybe you'll put sing at the top of your voice, or maybe you'll put dance like there's nobody watching. Totally up to you. This is your artwork, so you get to pick. Maybe you want your name on it. So I'm going to put a little bit here, and then I'm going to put a little bit up at the top, I think, maybe. I'm going to wait. Now, this is the other thing I want to tell you. Oftentimes, I will stop and just kind of look. Okay, is it done? Do I like it? Is it the way that I want it? Do I really need more? And I kind of don't think I do. I kind of like it the way that it is. So I think I'm actually going to be done with the words. But, you know, you may want to put a ton of words on here. You may feel like you need all the advice in the world because you want to remember all of this stuff. Feel free, absolutely. So I'm going to pause this now for a second, and I'm going to dry all my glue because the last couple of steps that we have, that all really needs to be dry completely before we can do anything else. So I'm going to dry the glue with my heat gun, my trusty little heat gun, and then I will be right back. Okay. So I want to explain that at this point right now, you may love this. You may be totally done. This may be exactly what you were looking to do. I don't want to mess with it anymore. Leave it alone. Totally fine. Remember, this is your artwork. So if you like this and this cleaner look for you, is what you want, don't mess with it anymore. It's totally fine. For me, I seem to not be able to leave things alone. Like I have to keep adding things to it. Just, I don't even know why, but that's kind of how I am. So what I want to show you is something a little bit interesting. Now here's the thing. This is just a piece of shelf liner. It is something you would put at the bottom of a drawer or a shelf to keep like the silverware container from sliding around. And it's got sort of a bumpy, I don't know if you can tell, maybe it's got like a bumpy texture. Anything like this is going to be great for adding texture. I will say too, you could ball up a paper towel and it could work. This with what we're going to do next. Bubble paper, tissue paper, sewing patterns, anything you can think of, tin foil, that could be manipulated if you put paint on it, a sponge, an SOS pad. You could put paint on it and it's going to give you an interesting sort of funky look. That's what we're going for. So, okay, I'm going to show you how to do this. Now, the best way that this works is when you're using a color that is similar in the same family as your background color. So I used a light gray. So for my colors, I'm going to use darker gray and white to do this next step, which is just adding texture. Okay, we are adding texture to it because it makes it a little more interesting. Now, if I were to use something like a pink or a green, it wouldn't quite look like it fit. You can try it. Maybe try it on a piece of scratch paper, paint yourself a little gray line, and then put some pink or some purple or something on it. You may love the way that it looks. Personally, I'm wanting to keep this a little more neutral, so I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be quite that daring. Now, the other thing is you may have like little paper plates around, or a piece of tin foil is great for this. When you are putting paint down, like you need to put some paint out and you need to dunk your brush in it, I will just use like, this is just an old business card from a show that we did. So I'm just going to use that because it's shiny. Can you even see how it's shiny? So that's what I'm going to use on here, just because it's not going to absorb the paint. If you put it on just like a paper plate, like a regular one, or some sort of piece of paper, it's going to absorb the paint right in there. And that's not what you're going for. So I'm going to put a little of that dark gray down. Wow. The lid does not want to close. And then I'm going to shake up my white, put a little bit of white down. Now these are not going to stick to this business card. So I'm going to find the bumpier side and I'm going to put a little bit of that darker gray right onto the back of the shelf liner. I'm telling you, you're going to get paint on your fingers. It's just going to happen. Accept it, love it, own it. Do not wear clothes that you can't get paint on because it'll come out of your fingers, but it will not come out of your clothes. You don't have to cover this perfectly. In fact, it's almost better if you don't. It's kind of cool when certain pieces are really covered and other pieces are not. So what I'm going to do, now I'm going to wipe my fingers off first, but here's the thing. You can, let me see if I can show you. All right, so here's my background. You can take this and you can push it really hard, and you know what? That's what's going to end up on your painting. That's not what you want. Okay? You do not want it to be like huge glops. The point here, and this is actually not my favorite color of gray, but it is the only one that I have. If I had this to do over, I'd probably get a little bit less brown gray, but I don't think it'll matter too much. If they did, I wouldn't use it. So what you're going to do instead, I've got it covered. I'm just going to go ahead and set it and lightly tap it. Okay, lightly tap that on there. There's no real rhyme or reason to this. I like to get some right onto the background of the paper so that it's covered. So then all of it kind of pulls in together. Okay, so make sure that you've got plenty to cover it up. You just want to get it right onto that paper, just a little, not a ton. Once it gets a little bit drier, you can kind of go to town with it. And you won't see it really, really well, but you're going to see it enough to where it's interesting and it's texturized, and that's what you want. Okay, now you're going to do the same thing with the white. And I do not even mind that this has gray paint on it and this has gray. I just use the same one because it's dry enough. I mean, I pretty much dabbed it dry. So here again, just going to go in. I'm going to flick a little bit on there. Just enough to be interesting. And then if you step back and you look at it and there's places where you feel like it needs a little bit more, just go ahead and do a little bit more. It's totally up to you. I wouldn't advise you to go too crazy, which maybe is what I'm doing right now. I'm not sure. And then if there's places like that are really, oh, I completely avoided that, then you can go in and do that. It just takes a second to sometimes see those things. So then you're done with that. Wipe your fingers off. Now the last step that we're going to do is we're going to outline this whole thing. But now I've just added new paint, so I have to dry this before I can outline it with the pen. Okay, so like I said, you might not want to do this step. This is the very last step, just outlining every piece that you put down. And I like to do it because it makes things stand out a little bit more. Everything on here is dry. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go in. These gel pens are perfect for this. I'm just going to outline every piece of paper. Obviously, I'm not going to do it perfectly. And what I do when it's not perfect is I add some little lines like that, like this right here, that's a little squiggle, to make it look like it wasn't meant to be perfect, because I really don't think that it was. You know, maybe with these scallops, you don't have to do every single one. You want it to look kind of sketchy. If you try to do it too perfect, it probably won't work out the way you want it to. It's just a difficult thing. So now I'm going to do each individual circle. Here again. Feel free to turn your canvas if you need to. Like for instance, it's way easier for me to draw this kind of a line, and this kind of a line. Put some little squiggles in there. Anywhere you mess up, just add some little squiggles, some little hash marks. Totally fine. Same thing here. Oops. Now here's the other thing. I can't hide that. So I can get this little paper towel wet. Usually with these gel pens, you can wipe right off while it's still wet. Dry it up. Just got a little too sloppy there. So you want to take your time enough to where it still looks like you're close. You're in the same general vicinity. The other thing is you want to be careful with these gel pens because they will smear. They're really wet there at the beginning. So give them time to dry. I like to kind of, even when it goes on really well, I still like to add the little squiggles. I just think it makes it look a little bit more interesting. So I always go around every single word phrase too. Not perfectly, just enough to make it stand out. Okay, and then I've got 3 more circles. Oh my goodness, you guys, we're almost done. Every once in a while it goes on really fine, but I have a very shaky hand, so it's not the norm. Wow, that's 2. 20 bucks says I can't do it again. Yep, see? I got really far away. So then I'm just going to go in and color right up next to it, do some little squiggles. Totally fine. Okay, now I'm going to do all these crazy little scallops, one at a time. And if you get, if you look at it while you're working, make sure you look at what you just did. If you hate it, just get that wet washcloth or that wet napkin, take it right off. Comes right off, no problem. I think learning to turn the canvas was a big thing for me. For the longest time, I just never did that, and it makes a really big difference. Just pick it up and turn it around, because sometimes your hand moves one way a lot more easily than the other way. So you want to go the direction that feels the most comfortable. Okay, we are so close, you guys. Let's go ahead and do all of these. Okay, take a look at it. Oh, I forgot to do these. Now here's the last thing. I really like my edges to kind of all come together. So what I do, actually this is the second to last thing, because I just thought of one more thing that I always would do if I were you. So what I'm going to do, you could do, let's see here, you could do a scallop, just like we did for here. You could go along and do that. You could just do some straight lines. I'm going to do a little bit of both. I'm going to do some straight lines and some scallops. There's no rhyme or reason here. And I want my scallops to look a little sketchy. And then just turn it around. Do the same thing here. It's almost like a little heart monitor. I don't plan this out when I do it. Just do it however you like. Whatever makes sense to you, whatever works with your hand. If you're worried about messing it up, plan it out. And that is it. Okay, so now the very last thing that we're going to do, I'm going to paint the edges. You see how I've got this nice thing on the front? My edges are still white. The easiest way that I know to do this is to take your paint and just drip it right onto the edge like this, and use your finger and just brush it right on. I used to be really careful about making sure that I was using a paintbrush and getting it all perfectly on there. It's just so much easier to use your finger. And you can just go all the way around each of these edges and do that. Then the last thing I would do is sign your name down here, or your initials, with the year. You're good to go. Mayflowers, all done. Can't wait to see what you guys come up with.